Okay, welcome back to the Mental Toughness Podcast. I'm your host, Steve Siebold. Welcome to the show. Welcome back to the show. We're sponsored by the Mental Toughness University for entrepreneurs and success coaches, as well as Mental Toughness University for corporate America, turning around sales teams in terms of increased sales and increased market share. So thanks to our sponsor on that. Today I want to talk about three things that really are some of the foundations of mental toughness and success. You know, what does mental toughness really mean? It means the ability to control and manipulate your emotions. That's really what it comes down to. Emotional creatures must be in control of their emotions. On the last show, I talked about how Will Smith at the Academy Awards just went absolutely ballistically out of control, seemingly from nowhere, or something's buried deep inside that guy that's kind of got a tempest in there somewhere, and walked up in front of a billion people on TV and slapped Chris Rock in the face. Assaulted a fellow performer. I've never seen anything like that, but that's an example of the lack of emotional control. You know, he's 50-something years old. He should have been able to control himself by now. It's ridiculous. But emotional control really is what it's about, a manipulation of emotion and controlling emotion. And most people are not in control of their emotions, and they don't know how to manipulate them in a positive sense to serve their own best interest. And that's what we really want to talk about. So the first one of the three I want to discuss on this episode today is persistence. I think that you can't have a discussion about mental toughness, especially in business or in sports, or really in anything. I mean, if you want to be a straight A student, you've got to be persistent. You know, unless you're just super gifted and everything comes to you easily, you're probably going to have to fight for that. You're going to have to persist in the face of obstacles and frustrations and all those things. You know, a lot of people that follow mental toughness are entrepreneurs. And I've been an entrepreneur for, almost 35 years. And it's one of the toughest things to do because you have so many obstacles, financial obstacles, everything you can think of seems to be an obstacle. The marketplace changes all the time. You've got all kinds of business things in your way, competition, all kinds of different things. And so persistence is just has to be there. You've got to be persistent, doggedly persistent. And I think it comes down to being so persistent that no rational human being would continue. And you got to be to the point where you just keep going because you know that's the only way you're going to make it. You've got to be persistent. Like, getting better in a sport. I mean, I played professional tennis. I played junior tennis. I trained for 18 years to be a pro. And that's 4 hours a day from the time I was 6 years old to the time I was 18 years old, traveling all over the country, sometimes internationally, and practicing over and over. Falling short, having some success, then falling short again. A little more success, falling short again. Over a period of years, you've got to really be persistent. There's really no other way, depending on what you want. Depending on the level of success that you're going for. And if it's a modest level of success, it can be a modest level of persistence. But you still have to persist. No question about it. I think number 2 would be sustained effort. The ability to sustain your motivation, your enthusiasm, your good feeling, your positivity as you're failing. It's easy when you're succeeding. When you're winning, everything is great. I mean, it's just easy, right? But when you're failing over and over and over, and you're still able to muster up enthusiasm and be positive and be energetic and be excited, that's rare. That's really rare. Sustained effort is tough, especially when you're losing. Again, when you're winning, you don't need these things. You're winning, it just goes along. You're making money, it goes along. You're getting what you want in whatever area it is. It's a different thing. But when it comes to failing over and over and over, the question becomes, can you sustain? Can you persist? Can you sustain your efforts, your behaviors, your execution long enough so you can get good enough to get what you want? And most people can't. They could, they just don't. So ask yourself a question on a scale of 1 to 7, 7 being most, 1 being least. What's your level of sustained effort? Do you sustain or do you quit project after project, business after business, looking for, I know a lot of entrepreneurs, they say, well, I quit that business, I'm looking for an easier one. Good luck. They're all tough. All of them are tough. Now, especially if it's a high margin business where you can make a lot of money, then the more profitable they are, typically, the tougher they are. So if you want to drive a bus or you want to drive Uber or you want to deliver pizzas, there's nothing wrong with that, but it's not super tough, but you're not going to make much money doing it. So it's a matter of how much you want to do. But if you really want to go for a dream, well, then you're going to have sustained effort, again, beyond what most people would even consider doing. But it just makes all the difference in the world. And number 3 is the ability to bounce back. The ability to bounce back when you fail. Over and over and over. It always reminded me when I first started my first business, and we were going from thing to thing to thing, my wife and I running our businesses back in the early 80s. And you just keep failing. It always reminded me of those, I don't know what they call them, but those bounce back toys that kids have. You blow them up and they have the sand on the bottom, and you hit the clown or whatever the face is on the toy, and it goes down to the ground and bounces back up. And I think you've got to be able to be that person that just keeps bouncing back up and goes forward just as strong as they did last time, even though they're failing every single time. I remember having a conversation with Richard DeVos about this, the founder of Amway, owner of the Orlando Magic. Rich died a few years ago, but I knew him. I interviewed him for over a 30-year period 3 times. He lived in Palm Beach during the winter, and I lived about maybe 5 miles from his house in Palm Beach. And great guy, but Rich used to talk about the idea that, and him and I had some personal conversations and interviews I did with him, and times we'd speak at conventions together. And he had a lot of feelings about the ability to bounce back. He'd say that's the key to the whole thing. You've got to be able to bounce back, because anyone can persist and execute their skills and their behaviors when times are good, but it's when times are bad. Can you keep going, getting knocked down, 7 times and getting up at number 8 and saying, let's go, come on, let's go forward. He used to tell that kind of that story, and that was one of the examples he used. And just a great guy. But he was an example of that. I mean, the guy was criticized his whole life for being the founder of Amway and all kinds of different things. I'll tell you, it's one of the greatest people I ever met in my life. Super nice guy, very humble. I can tell you Rich DeVos stories you'd love, but for another episode maybe. But those 3 things: persistence and sustained effort, and the ability to bounce back on a scale of 1 to 7, 7 being best, 1 being least. Where do you fall? What would you rate yourself? Objectively, as you possibly can be. If you're a 7, God bless you. Most of us are not. Most of us fall short. So if you're not a 7, how do you get to a 7? Well, there's all kinds of mental toughness tools that you can use to get there. I wrote a whole book on this called The 177 Mental Toughness Secrets of the World Class, which is an international bestseller, has been for 20 years or so. And I list all these different tools that these great performers use to learn to persist, to learn to sustain their effort, to learn to bounce back. And that's really what mental toughness is all about. It's the ability to hang in there, to be tough. Again, when you're winning, it's easy. This is all about losing. It's all about persisting in the face of obstacles and continuing to move forward at the same level of effort. And again, positivity and enthusiasm even. Not an easy thing to do. Easy to talk about, not easy to do. And but worth its weight in gold. So if you're anything less than a 7 in all 3 of these areas, then you need help. You need to work on it. Read some books, watch some listen to some podcasts, watch some videos on YouTube, whatever it takes, and incorporate some of these psychological skills to take you to the level where you can get these things. Because if you don't, you're going to have to be satisfied with a lower level of success. And if you're okay with that, I'm okay with that. It's up to you. But you probably wouldn't be listening to this podcast if you didn't want something. Mental toughness is for people that want things. They know it's what makes the difference between success and failure, with all other things being equal, right? It's that one thing that pushes you over the edge, is that toughness to hang in, that toughness to proceed, to keep pushing. When no rational person would keep pushing, you keep pushing, and all of a sudden you hit the home run and everyone thinks you're a genius. When really the fact of it was you just persisted far longer than anyone else probably would. And then you get the trophy, you get the reward, you get the money, whatever it is you get the win, whatever it is you were going after. So ask yourself where you are, and then take action to implement psychological tools to get you to that 6 or 7 out of 7. Make all the difference in the world, I promise. So I appreciate you listening to the show. We're going to talk more about these things in the next episode number 4. I'll see you then.